in Montana. Nancy Oar lives a very interesting life by herself with Tom. Today we're going to talk about her amazing life in the woods and the terrible things that happened to her. Many people didn't understand, but this woman had been through a lot. How did she get away? Watch out, let's hear the whole story. She and Tom Oar. As long ago as there were rodeos and cameras, Tom Oar lived a pretty good life in the Wild West. His quick and brave trip made him famous all over the world and brought him together with Nancy Oar, who would become his wife and partner for life. From what we know about Tom Oar's life, he was a famous bronc rider who loved the thrill of riding wild horses across the American West in the 1960s and early 1970s. They have a close relationship that has shaped Nancy's personal life just like it did for Tom Oar. She may or may not have known Tom Oar, but they did fall in love, have a child, and the rest is history. Nancy Oar spent her whole life making art, while Tom Oar spent his whole life riding horses. Tom soon couldn't handle all the noise and activity at the rodeo anymore. For him it was more than just a job. But he knew that the excitement was too much for his body, and he wanted more from life. That's why he slowed down. He seemed to find happiness in the quiet times with his wife, Nancy Oar. Being away from everyone and everything brought Nancy and Tom peace. They were completely alone, but they loved it. That kind of solitude could be called wild and brutal, and not many people could handle it, but it was pure happiness for these two. So they went to the Yock Valley in Montana, where wolves lived well and winter came early and stayed too long. The world for the Oars had something that wasn't set. The land was clean, far from the real world, and offered a new start away from all the noise. Tom and Nancy were both drawn to this world, but Tom more so. People who lived there had to be driven to survive, and they were repaid for their efforts with peace. The Oars had a simple house and a few other things when they first got to the valley. There was no power, running water or phone. What they had and any other things they had to work for got them by. Firewood was what they had to use to stay warm. No matter how hard it was, they would carry one log at a time. People worked the land, hunted, trapped and foraged for food. They were living away from people, and the world thought they were off the grid. There were some hard things in their new world, but they also found peace. They were going back in time while the world was becoming easier to live in. Native American groups have been teaching people how to tan hides for many generations, and Tom started to learn it himself. This was how he kept in touch with nature. It was also a skill, but more of a way of life that was deeply rooted. Nancy Oar was always with him. She helped Tom build a house in the woods, and their life together was more like it was in the 1800s than in the 21st. Their days were pretty quiet, but that didn't mean they were bored or didn't have anything to do. On the other hand, every morning brought a new test. Either they were looking for an animal, getting ready for a storm, or fixing tools. They were living together on their own terms, even though it looked like they were just getting away from life in the woods. There were no rules, cameras, or groups. This was Nancy and Tom's dream. It was almost like heaven. But good things always come to an end. During the Mountain Man years, Nancy Oar didn't want fame or the attention that came with it. They had never heard of reality TV, just like Tom Oar. And if you had asked them about it in the early 2000s, they most likely wouldn't have known what to say. They had been in the mountains most of the time, making gloves, checking traps, and collecting wood for the fire. Being on a reality show and getting used to having cameras following them around every other day were the last things on their minds. Things were different in 2012 though, and everyone wanted to see Nancy and Tom Oar. The people who made Mountain Men weren't looking for players. For the show to work, they needed to be real. For them to work, real people had to leave the comforts of the world and live real lives. The clear choice? Tom Oar and Nancy Oar, his wife. It was clear-cut. Some of them had honest hands that had been through a lot, soft voices and even knowledge. For this new show, the Oars were the best choice. There was no reason for them to be someone else. Nancy and Tom Oar didn't practice their lines or put on a show for the cameras. Nothing would change who they were. They were going to stay that way no matter what. That's what they did. People quickly became interested in Tom and Nancy Oar's lives because they told a real and interesting story that they couldn't help but love. Like his friend who lived down the road, Tom Oar, would use hand tools to build new log houses and make frontier-era moccasins from dyed hides. He would also show people from all over the country how to make buckskin shirts. It was just as interesting to watch Nancy Oar. She talked about Tom's way of life, which included catching, tanning, and making things by hand. These things, like moccasins, buckskin clothes, and leather goods, were sold by the row at the Willow Bend trading post in Troy, Montana. It was a simple but beautiful life, and most people couldn't go a second or a day without their phones. Tom and Nancy went well together. Tom was chasing bears off his land and making tea by boiling pine leaves. Nancy and Tom both lived off the grid, and their lives were connected. As the show got even more famous, fans wrote to Nancy and Tom asking for help. People liked how easy the couple's life was and how it showed others how to live. Even though Nancy and Tom's life had changed, it was still an easy one that thousands of people could see. Tom and Nancy Oar's life together was what made the show really magical. They worked hard on everything they did, no matter how big or small it was. They had a clear sense of purpose and a zest for life. They weren't trying to make anyone like them, they were just living. And that was the trick that kept people watching season after season. People could trust Tom Oar as long as Nancy Oar was with him. They loved Tom Oar and thought he was a good man to listen to. This wasn't just true for Tom. Nancy was also a wonderful wife and mother. People were amazed at how well they lived as a couple. People saw Tom and Nancy go about their lives without caring about the latest trends or the social norms. Their roots were in family and simplicity, and they knew who they were. Even though the show brought them attention and fame, they didn't change who they were or what they believed in. They stuck to their simple way of life and never tried to get advertising or brand deals. It didn't matter to them what kind of life they were making in the woods, and share it with everyone, including their friends and family. Nancy Oar is a name that everyone who likes mountain men and people who are interested in art and charity knows. Since she's married to mountain man Tom Oar, it's easy to think of her as a wife. But she's more than that. In all of her greatness, Nancy Oar has made important contributions to many causes and has had a huge effect on her neighborhood and beyond. She was born in a small town. She always wanted to be creative and help other people even when she was young. Her life hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows. She has been through a lot, but her drive and strength have always helped her keep going. To fully understand Nancy Oar's terrible tragedy, you need to know about her life up to this point. She was born in Springfield, Illinois on March 15, 1980. Nancy has always loved the arts, even when she was very young. This would have a big impact on her job choices later on. The University of Illinois is where she got her schooling, and she graduated with a degree in fine arts. As a child in Illinois, Nancy's family was very welcoming and loved helping her develop her artistic skills. A lot of art contests were held for her at school, which helped her feel better about herself and get better at being artistic. By the time she finished high school, she had chosen to go to the University of Illinois to follow her love of the arts. She did very well in school and then went on to make her way in the world. She was also able to get better at what she did, which set her up for a successful future job. It's simple to picture Nancy Oar's life going along with that of her husband, Tom Oar. However, her life as a person is much more interesting on its own. Following her graduation from college, Nancy Oar chose to start her journey in the art world. It wasn't a surprise that she did well in the art world. She became famous very quickly for her unique style and new ways of doing things. By 2002, she had her first solo show, which got good attention from critics. From now on, she will have an endless number of wins. About 4 big shows have been held for her. The one-person show at the Art Institute of Chicago in 2005, to the group show in New York City in 2007, the artist who was shown at the National Gallery in 2010 was another one. Last but not least, the International Art Fair in Miami in 2015 was another big show. You have to admire Nancy Oar's style as an artist. A lot of people say that her style is a mix of current ideas and old-fashioned methods, which not many artists can copy. Nancy Oar gets ideas from the things around her, that much is known. She uses bright colors and complicated patterns in her art to show how she feels and tell stories. The things she's most interested in show up in her art as well. Her art often shows how she feels about society, identity, and strength, and it's a true reflection of her life. Putting aside her work as an artist and her life with the Mountain Guys, Nancy Oar is known for her charitable work. She has been involved in a lot of charity events and groups, which shows that only the nicest people use their fame for good. Mountain Man's Nancy Oar is truly one of a kind. She is proud to give back to charities that work to improve education, raise understanding about mental health, and help poor communities. Nancy's job was never limited to being married to Tom Oar. She flew far enough to help people who were in trouble. She did it to help the people she cares about in the neighborhood. Many people in and outside of the mountain man world respect and admire her for her dedication to giving back. Going back to the part where many people fell in love with Nancy's wife, she doesn't do silly things to get attention. Many people fell in love with her just by being on Mountain Man. Her fans have said that she is strong, smart, and quietly powerful. People in some online groups have called her the series' hidden star. People who love her can relate to her because she is the underdog on Mountain Man. Her amazing and sometimes sad journey shows how strong, passionate, and tough she is. Her love story with Tom Oar is just as important to her as her life as a whole. The couple got married soon after meeting. Nancy Oar likes to keep her privacy, but fans of the Mountain Men have been able to see her life with Tom Oar. It's true that Nancy Oar is the kind of woman that any man would want to be with him. But is her life story too sad for most people to handle? We don't know what goes on in her personal life, but she gives us hints in talks and on social media. Through good times and bad, Nancy Oar loves her family and friends and enjoys spending time with them. She also has a lot of people who help her, like her famous husband Tom Oar, who has been a big part of her success. What makes Nancy Oar a great person? Loving her for her work on Mountain Man is one thing. Loving her for her kindness and ability to find the good in life's worst situations is something else entirely. The challenges that break your heart. As their fame grew, things got harder for the boats. The Tom Oar was almost 70 years old, but he was still cutting wood and swimming through cold rivers. Lots of people liked Tom and Nancy, but nature's confusing aura had a lot in store for them. Problems started to show up in many ways, but the snow was the first one that stood out. It wasn't new for Tom Oar to deal with cold. He had been doing that for about 30 years, but things were different this time. What did Tom Oar always do? He was shoveling the roof of his house, as he usually did, but this time everything went wrong. The snow loads, which are very dangerous in Montana winters, were the reason Tom Oar had climbed his roof so many times before. These loads of snow were strong enough to cause a buildup, which could cause a roof to fall down. That's when Tom grabbed his shovel and climbed up to get out of this mess. But the ice was already very thin. The worst did happen, which is too bad. Tom's boots stopped gripping the ground. He was already on the ground when everyone else saw him. The effects of the fall were beyond terrible. Nancy Oar was shocked. Tom fell off the roof, and getting back on was just as painful as the fall. He was in unbearable pain after the fall, and it took him a long time to get better. This was a clear sign from the wild. It's possible that Tom's body could no longer handle the rough life in the mountains. Tom was used to cutting wood, climbing on roofs, and carrying things through snow up to his hips. But these bad habits cost him his life, and Nancy got tired of the way he was acting. Nancy Oar was there when he fell, which was lucky. When she was feeling hopeless, she ran to help her husband, who was in a lot of pain. She was also feeling very upset. What if the next time she wasn't there? Then what would happen? When Tom fell, what if he went deeper into the snow, or even worse, on the ice? What if no one was around to help him? It was hard and painful for the Oars to be where they were. Tom had based his life on being self-sufficient and independent, but he was only human, and the mountains were a good way to remind him of that. He was slowly losing the freedom he had once shown, and for the first time in a long time he had to face the truth head on. He could no longer run away from time. They thought about their choices slowly at first, almost unconsciously, as if telling each other the truth would make it harder to handle. For months they went back and forth between denying and accepting the thought. Then one day, the quiet choice came all at once, soft and slow, like the first snow of winter. They were leaving Montana. Even though it wasn't made all at once, that choice felt like it was final when it was said out loud. It wasn't like moving homes or looking at a map to find new places to go when I left Montana. It was more like leaving a part of themselves behind. They were doing more than just moving. They were burying a part of their history that was cut into the ground in the Bitterroot Valley and could be heard in the houses that Tom had built himself. For more than 30 years, they had lived with the land. The pace of their daily lives changed with the seasons. In the spring, the roof had to be fixed and the traps had to be checked. In the summer, I spent long days in the sun, stacking firewood and taking care of the yard. In the fall, they went hunting and got ready for winter, which tried them. It had always been that way, but now something was different. It wasn't hard to get through the cold anymore. They were now a danger. The cold was stronger than before, and Tom's joints hurt in ways he couldn't ignore because they were worn out from years of work. Nancy started to feel scared when it snowed. What if Tom fell or got sick and they couldn't get help in time? Not about being stuck inside because of the snow. They used to find peace in the mountains, but now they told them about dangers they should not take. They did something they never thought they would. They started to look guides, phone calls, and maps. They looked for a place that didn't make them feel alone or lonely. Even they were surprised when Florida turned out to be the best choice. They didn't move there because of its beauty or climate. Those were things they were not used to. But because it was close to their family, their grandkids had grown up while they sent them Christmas presents and look at holiday pictures. Now that they lived closer, they could go to birthday parties, school plays, and Sunday dinners with them. In every way, Florida was very different from Montana. It wasn't snow-capped mountains or cool air from the pines. There were no elk at dawn or wood smoke at night, sunshine instead of snow, sand instead of dirt, and palm trees instead of evergreens. But being near the laughter of children and the warmth of shared food helped. They give up being alone for being with others, cold weather for warm weather, and freedom for depending on each other. It wasn't loud when it was time to say goodbye. No big news was given, and there were no exciting last looks at the mountains. It was solemn and quiet. Tom was standing on the deck he built. He ran a worn-out hand along the fence, not to draw attention to himself, but because he remembered. She carefully shut the door behind her because she knew they were leaving more than a house. It showed how much they loved and had been through. Slowly they drove away. The old truck groaned under the weight of tools, picture albums, and other things that belonged to a life that had been won and lived with great passion. The roads wound around in pine woods and open fields. The mountains were no longer visible in the rearview mirror as the landscape flattened out. But the memory stayed with them, like the smell of wood smoke on their clothes. Some things about their new life in Florida would be easy, and some things would be harder. Tom would miss the quiet of the woods, the view of the stars from their back porch, and the feel-good pain of a job well done. Nancy would miss how the seasons changed, how quiet it was, and how she was by herself. But what they got back was just as important. The laugh of a grandchild coming down the hall, the simple pleasure of eating a hot meal with family and friends, or the comforting sound of family close by. When they left Montana, it broke parts of their hearts they didn't know could break, but they faced the pain together, just like they had faced every winter and loss. They held each other through the sadness of saying goodbye and stepped into the unknown with the quiet strength of people who had been through a lot and knew when to fight, how to let go. It wasn't enough to just stay alive. It was important to live well, to live a good life. You had to know when to let go of something important to make room for something just as important. Being there, connecting, and the beauty of being known. Tom Oar's health problems and sad losses in 2022, while shooting season 11 of the TV show Mountain Men, Tom Oar had one of the hardest times of his life. A health scare that almost made him give up living in the mountains for good. His wife, Nancy Oar, went through another terrible loss during this health scare. In this point in time, Tom was 80 years old and still lived off the grid in the York Valley of Montana. And even though he wasn't on the show, everyone around him, especially Nancy Oar, was worried about his health. Tom was told he had a dangerous heart problem that could cause him to have trouble breathing and build up fluid in his lungs. The fluid had started to build up in his lungs, which the doctors found was because his heart muscle was getting weaker. This made things hard for both Tom and Nancy, because this disease could be fatal if it wasn't handled. Tom was given a strict schedule to follow. He had to take his medicine, his heart rate was being tracked, and a vest with a defibrillator. Following this strict plan turned out to be a nightmare. The Oars were going through an area with poor or no cell service that was a long way from the closest hospital. It was logically impossible to get through. Even so, Nancy Oar stayed strong and steady through it all. As time went on, Nancy took on more of the hard work and made sure Tom took his medicines. She would also keep an eye on his symptoms, but most importantly, she was there for him emotionally the whole time. This event was very hard on Tom, and it was also very hard on Nancy. Nancy Oar was saddened when she thought about losing her partner, but she kept her mind on getting through the desert alive. She was a light of hope for Tom, even though she was going through a lot of pain. To survive, she knew it wasn't enough to just make it through the desert. It was also important to get through life's hardest times with others. By 2024, Tom's health had gotten worse, so he had to go back to the hospital. Nancy Oar was scared when she thought about Tom's health getting worse. Many of his fans also thought the worst, and internet reports of his death spread like wildfire. Tom was lucky to be alive, and Nancy never left his side. No matter how scary the health scare was, the Oars had a very sad loss in 2015, April 26th, and that day marked a tragedy that no parent should ever have to see. Keely Oar, Tom's daughter, died in St. Petersburg, Florida on that April day. In 2004, she played a part on the TV show Mountain Men. She was 49 years old. Keely Oar was Tom's daughter from a previous relationship, but Nancy was related to her. When Nancy was sad, she felt a link with everyone else who was sad about Keely's death. Although they didn't live together, Keely's presence was always felt, and her death left a huge hole in the hearts of everyone who loved her. For the sake of the family, the details of Keely's death will not be shared, but Tom and Nancy's feelings were deeply hurt and broken. Family friends say that Nancy held Tom together during those hard months, even though she was very sad. This shows that Nancy has always been a source of strength for the Oar family, even through all the health scares, death and heartbreaks in the winter. She stood strong in a way of life that not many people could handle. Even though she was hurting, Nancy was strong for her husband Tom. A lot of people love and support her because of the attention she gets, even if she doesn't like it. People started to say bad things about Tom and Nancy online as they stepped out of the public eye. A lot of people started to wonder if Tom Oar was dead. People began to wonder if he was still sick or if he was hiding something. The truth is finally here. Tom Oar is still alive and well. He is no longer living the rough life in the mountains, but he is still healthy and aging normally, just like anyone else who has lived an exciting life for decades. Mountain Men, he and Nancy Oar aren't on the show anymore, but they are also not hiding. Tom and Nancy are still happy with the life they made together. They sometimes go to events, do interviews, and even tell people about the work they're doing now. For many years, Tom and Nancy Oar were in love, had exciting adventures, and lost their hearts. But despite everything, they stayed true to themselves, their beliefs in freedom, love, and being honest. Nancy Oar stands for all the women who suffer through life's storms and heartaches. To take care of the people they love, her impact goes beyond the art she makes and lives through the things she does. She's not just married to Tom Oar. In her own way, she continues to affect the lives of many people. Tom kept going even though he lived in Florida. Leaving the mountains didn't mean doing nothing. He kept himself busy by making things and working with leather. Nancy Oar stayed by his side the whole time. She stayed a loyal partner who enjoyed their quiet adventures and the simple things that they did every day. Judy and Tom lived in Yelk Valley for many years. With all these years behind them, they have a lifetime of happy memories that will follow them everywhere. These aren't just memories, they are also what makes them who they are and show us how they should live our real lives. The Oar's dedication to independence stays strong through the years and heartaches. Their life journey has taken them to places where they feel at peace, no matter where home is. They might keep finding small things to stay alive and exciting things to do. Instead of cutting down big trees for firewood, they might grow a small garden. No matter where they are, their love of the land is just as amazing. Even when things go wrong in their lives, their link to the wild stays strong, and fans are amazed by this. Tom and Nancy Oar are still living the life they worked hard to create. Even though they don't talk about it, they still try to live strong and brave lives. No matter what, they stay true to their beliefs and choose freedom over ease and being themselves over fame. Millions of other people are still inspired to do the same. It looks like they had a very interesting and good life on screen, and it's interesting to see it through the eyes of mountain men. Without a doubt, Nancy Oar is a powerful person. You can be touched or motivated by her story. Just remember how powerful it is to pick your own path in life. What do you think of her? Drop your ideas in the box below. Don't forget to subscribe and click the like button. Please click on the movie that is shown on your screen before you leave.